All right. Today's Thrive Thursday is hosted by our one and only Pallavi Gupta. Pallavi is the founder of Divine Lotus, which is a Desi wellness coaching business dedicated to empowering Desi women. And as Pallavi describes, Desi women are Indian from India or the surrounding areas, and also other women of color, especially who are navigating dual cultures, family one culture, growing up in another culture, because she has experienced this and made it through. And she uses her 5 agreements to uh, to work with clients to help give them permission to live authentically on their own terms. And with one-on-one coaching, group support, one-on-one retreats, she equips women with the tools to conquer stress, advocate for self-care, and cultivate inner balance, which then becomes outer balance in work, relationships, and life. And she has a retreat coming up October 18th through 20th, the Sacred Self Retreat in beautiful California for women of color navigating dual cultures, focusing on self love, setting boundaries, and letting go of control. If you know anyone who may be interested, you can reach out to Pallavi to connect them. So thank you, Pallavi, for being here. I'll let you take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, Whitney, for the beautiful and lovely introduction. Before I start into anything, what I love to do, because we all are busy women and we have busy lives, let's just take a moment to just breathe and be grateful that we're all here today. So just gently close your eyes, and I want you to take some deep inhales, and let's practice what I love to call the 5-5-7 breath. So inhale for 5 counts, hold for 5 counts, and exhale slowly for 7. And on any of these exhales, feel free to just sigh it out, make some noise. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Yeah. Sometimes we just need to breathe.
I don't think I've ever done that before.
I think most of us forget.
I mean, like intentionally and feel like I suddenly could feel the blood rushing through my body at very high speeds. And yeah, interesting.
Yes. So this is how I love to start all my sessions, all my workshops. Let's just take a moment. Let's just breathe from wherever we're coming from and where we're going to go to next, because we often forget because we're on go mode. So a little bit touching on what Whitney was saying earlier is I myself have been and continue to navigate dual cultures. Grew up with conservative Indian parents. My parents immigrated from India, first my dad, and he decided to go to India, find my mom through the newspaper ads. 2 weeks later, they're married and they come back, they come here. And, you know, while that is not necessarily expected of me, but, you know, I was shown what success and dream is supposed to be. You get an education, you get married, and you have kids. That equals success. And that's not programming. Well, guess what? I got my education, and I am not the typical engineer. I am not the typical lawyer or doctor or whatever, crazy high paid, status that we're supposed to be chasing. I'm doing something what I love, and it's humbling to serve the women and support them in their journey. And part of that led me into, I was trying to find that bridge. I've always wanted to serve and help people. How do I do that? And I jumped and jumped and jumped around. My first career was in human resources. I found that great bridge, advocating for employees, but also recognizing the areas where the leadership needed help and trying to bridge that support. And after some point, I lost that and that passion. And I think working with a couple of companies during COVID and saw how they treated their employees, I was just utterly disgusted. Thank you, Valerie. And so while I was working with some of these small companies, I actually developed chronic stress. In 1 year, I had five, believe it or not, five viral infections, including COVID. And I was also sexually harassed with one of my clients. And that's where I realized I actually don't need to be mistreated. I don't want to live life like this. How do I pivot? And it was while I was during COVID, I was introduced to a meditation teacher, and I could never meditate for the life of me. But I also realized I could. And that same teacher is also a life coach. And in that same week, both that life coach and a friend of mine, as we were talking about her career problems, told me, hey, you should become a life coach. I was like, what is this? What is a life coach? I've never heard of this. And I did my research and I was like, oh my gosh, with my human resources background, my nutrition background, I can support people and all of the life experiences I've had to deal with and all the crap that I've taken on in my life. And that's as I started working through my crap, that's where I started to build the framework, the 5 agreements, which is what I want to teach you guys. So this is very much interactive. And it's because of that, and I apply this framework almost every day in my life. Sometimes I forget, but that's okay. But we're human. And I think we need to recognize things happen. We are human, and it's okay. And oftentimes we're trying to control everything. Right? So, with the first one of the agreements that I want to lead into is being open to experiences. And I want to pass this out there. Why do you think that's actually important? Why is it necessary to be open to experience?
To be open to experience, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. if we're it seems so simple, right? It seems so simple. We have experiences every day. But actually, the type of experiences that can be impactful and life-changing tend to scare us, right? We get scared of what if I fail? What if I succeed? So, yeah, we don't want to live in fear.
I think people are really, I think I agree with you. I don't think I do. I do. It's more, it's bigger, I think, though. It's, although we've been changing since the day we were born, people don't like change or disruption. They like their routine. I think majority of people, I don't want to broad brush it because I'm personally not like that. I'm a very flexible, open-minded person, but shocking enough, I find 99% of the people I interact with are not that way. And I'm always surprised how reluctant they are just to step out of their comfort zone just a little bit, just a little bit. You know, I'm crazy though. I'll go skydiving. Let's go. Yeah. Someone asked me to go to a mud run. All right, let's go. Like I'm not afraid of being afraid. But that is not a comfortable place for most people. And I've always looked at it really differently. If you don't put yourself in uncomfortable situations, they'll never get comfortable. Public speaking is one of them. If you don't go and public speak, you never really get comfortable with public speaking. So I purposely sign up for them so I can't back out. And I know I'll always follow through on my word so that I can get comfortable with that experience. And then eventually, it'll be comfortable. And I think that trying new experiences, whether just a new hobby and the other thing is people don't think they have time for it either.
Yeah. So something I heard from the ladies from my meetup group this past Sunday when we went rock climbing. So I always have a twist with my in-person events. Yes, we have an activity, but there's always going to be a twist. And for them, it was, what is the one thing you want to overcome in the challenge that you want to grow resilience to? And they actually said, experiences. I want to try something different. And one of the ladies was, frankly, I'm actually very comfortable and happy being at home. I don't need to leave. Ah, but she showed up to this event in person. She got out of the house and she had a completely different experience. And what I found is when you're open to experiences, you you end up discovering the endless possibilities. You don't know what's out there unless you are open to receive those. I love the fact that you said, Valerie, that you're not afraid to be afraid, right? You just like put me in whatever and I'll just do it and I'll commit to it, right? And part of that fear is that fear of uncertainty, right? Uncertainty of the process or the outcome,
Failure. Well, what if I
right?
look foolish? What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? Or I don't think I really can do that. I
I
haven't
don't know how
trained
to do
for it.
this.
Yeah. You could easily be a homebody and go, you want me to go on a hike tomorrow? I haven't hiked in like 10 years, right? Like you could easily like tell that to yourself. Or you can just go on the hike and say, you know what? I'm going to go at my level. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to try to make it. If I don't, and accept that that's what you can give that day.
Exactly that, right? We hold on to expectations. What if we just let expectations go and just be? What if that? Okay. So the second one is being curious and experimental. Why is that important?
Well, the studies have shown that a set of kindergartners beat a group of engineers in building the highest little tower with the supplies they were given because they were willing to experiment, not think too much about it, and just go for it. And they did it faster too. So when you do that, you open up that level of creativity to think smarter, not harder. And you can tell I'm always reading self-help books and all those good things.
Aren't we all? Yeah. Right? It opens up the creativity when you become more of, let's look at it in the hypothesis format, right? Anybody else want to share?
Was that
Okay,
still having technical problems?
probably. And she's in the office. So, what
Oh,
I look at being curious and experimental, which I often didn't prior to me putting this into place. And what I found was I flipped the script when I was being curious. I started reflecting more, started asking myself things, started noticing different things about myself, right? Instead of, let's say if something or someone irritated me, which sometimes that happens, people can rub us the wrong way, not on purpose. But if you start taking me out of the picture and looking at the situation, right? And you stop taking things personally, as we tend to do, you kind of start getting a different perspective,
mhm.
right? And you look at things differently. Or you start asking yourself, why am I feeling this mood today? What's making me excited today? What am I looking forward to today? Or if I'm feeling kind of down, what do you think contributed to that? Right? Like when you start getting in touch with your emotions and your body and bringing on that awareness, right? That self reflection allows you to then start having a new perspective. But also, when you're around other people and you take away the judgment, in that sense too, which allows you to see a new possibility, a new perspective about the same situation. And as you said, that creativity, right? With that, let me experiment this way. How can I build it this way? You're getting creative with the challenges that are there.
So I have a question. Do you think that when you allow yourself to do that, then you stop putting those similar expectations on others as well?
I think so. What do you think?
I think so. I had an interesting comment by someone who described my children. Yeah, what is something? I'm like, I don't really put any expectations on them to act a certain way. I just let them be them, and I go, and they just happen to be climbers and sports enthusiasts and like monster trucks, and that's okay. That's okay. And so I immediately started thinking and envisioning, all the boundaries that society puts on us. I know I certainly experienced that. And so then we get put into this little box. And if we get out of our box, we get in trouble. I've never fit in the box really well. So, and so you put all that pressure on yourself by being, quieting all of that stuff around you and just saying, I'm just going to show up as my authentic self and with good intention and be intentional. It's made all the difference in the world. It took me a really, really long time to get there. But it does. It just kind of brings back that childlike curiosity and the willingness to experience new things and try new things and not be afraid. Like, okay, that didn't work. I can check that off of my hypothesis of that one. Let's go try another test, right? That's kind of how science works. So, yeah.
I love that you brought up about boundaries. And that's kind of tricky, right? It's from the outside world, it's for yourself, which actually is my third agreement, is establishing boundaries because some of us have trouble with boundaries. And that's the thing. There's a balance for each person. People, yes, in society, we were taught to put yourself, every person needs to have a label or a box to be put into because we need to organize it that way, right? That's just how the human mind wants to work. And it's about control that way. But in some cases, some people need boundaries because either they're in the people pleasing phase, right? And they maybe are pushovers and they get upset and riled and like they don't know how to handle it. Or it's maybe a lot of clutter, right? Because that's just how their mind is experiencing. They can't organize things in a certain way. And you can have organized chaos, right? But when I look at boundaries, I look at it in the sense of what is it I need right now to be authentic? What do I need the outside people to understand about me? And what do I need from them or I don't need from them? And how do I be clear about that? Because if I'm not clear with myself, with my needs and wants, then how can I expect that from others? Right? And it's a delicate balance. And when you have these certain boundaries that are either open or and loose or in somewhere it's a little tighter, right? Then the experiences that happen to you are, looser and tighter in certain areas, right? For example, who wants to be around someone toxic or a toxic group of people? You said you've been trying to find your tribe of women where you feel you can show up as your authentic self, right? You don't want to be in a tribe of women that are just constantly being judgmental and you can't show up as yourself.
Or judgmental or uninspired or not willing to go and get out of their own comfort zone and zero ambitions and like they're just draining, right? And I just can't. Like I want someone who's fueling my fire, so I can feel that, feel I can fuel them in return. So if we're all on a similar path, right? Maybe not going toward the same goals, but we're all out there trying something new. We're being brave. This is scary. I've had a dozens of men tell me that they've thought about doing what I'm doing so many times, and for whatever reason have not. Not my problem. I don't know why you need to tell me that you didn't think you would be successful. Um, I'm not scared by that. Always go back. So that's not the goal. But I want to surround by people who, when I am doubting myself, I'm like, oh, I don't know, this has been a rough day, or maybe this isn't, my path. I have other people who are kind of going down their own path with their own businesses, and we can all support each other in that way. So I think your tribe is important, and who you surround yourself with is super, super important because it kind of becomes a part of you. So,
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Whitney.
Yeah, I was just thinking, reflecting on my experience of being in this group and another networking group for the past 4 years. And I mean, I think there's no way I'd still be here doing this and be where I'm at without the help and support, even if it hasn't been direct. Like, okay, Whitney, here, this is going to help you in your business specifically. Just having the peers around me that are also working on their business and hearing from other people and getting ideas. And yeah, we need that network of support.
Yeah, and it's okay to have multiple tribes where you can show up in multiple facets of yourself. You're not static, right? You have ups, you have downs, and you might need someone in one particular in your area, right? Maybe it's a mom's group because you are moms, right? Or you're in this part of your business, right? Different tribes are going to do different things for you, right? It's why I kind of love the organization meetup. You can have a different organization or a group touching on different facets of your life. I love that we have this one group where she's combined it about, let's talk about books. Let's talk, if you like to bake, let's bake something for the season. If you want to sew, let's sew something. Let's get arts and crafty. It's like, bring out your nerdiness because it's okay. And I love that. Like, she's got all of this rolled up in this one, right? There's other groups out there, and support yourself in the different ways. When I look at boundaries, I'm looking at, what do I need to do to protect my mood, my energy, and my time? Because we have this one precious life, right? If we burn out and we allow ourselves to burn out, right? It's hard to come back from that. So if you can start having this awareness and recognize, am I starting to burn out? Oh crap, what do I do now? What's causing this burnout? Is it the people I'm in tribes with or not? Am I just in my own little bubble and just running around chasing my tail? Right? Or am I just doing more than I can actually handle because I have this expectation?
yeah.
I have to do more. I have to, versus I want to. Right? Because, or you're doing all these obligations. I got all these family obligations. If I don't show up to this will cause someone to be upset with me. And I don't want to make them upset. Or maybe you have all this networking groups and you need to show up in all of these places because if I don't, they're gonna lose sight of me and I'm not gonna be important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that really matter? Or does my health matter? Does my happiness matter? Right? We sign up for so many things because we feel the necessary need to please them, potentially. But then that forms resentment.
I always, and it's only recently because I am one of those people who do too much, and I'm a complete machine, and I'm fully aware of my machineness and grinding. But having to do more just to be accepted in my circle kind of pushed me into that realm. And then I had to find the whole set boundaries, and then I had to say, okay, something's got to give here. So I had to sit back and go, okay, what can I be okay with just being bad at? I just am going to be bad at it. So if anybody says anything to me, I'm like, I'm sorry. I can't be perfect at everything. And this is the thing that I chose. I'm just going to be bad at it. It is. And I'm okay with that. And I really don't care
I
what you.
love that. I love what Brene Brown says. She has this beautiful book, and I read it long ago, but I'm trying to come back and read it, but my book list is super long, and I am not a fast reader, and I'm okay with that. And I like to take my time with my books, and I like hard books. Um, but her book is The Gifts of Imperfection. We're not robots, and
I
it's
love that.
okay to be imperfect because there is beauty in that.
That's a really good one. And I would also throw out Worthy. You may want to look at it.
Mm,
It's about a woman who started her own business, launched it. Eventually, it was a makeup line. And eventually, it was bought by Estee Lauder. She had a very, um, not the best start in life, She didn't come from, have the best foundation, family, all the things, right? And she just went through this worthy journey, and she talks about it in the book. It's a very short book. I actually think I read it on a plane, right? So
love that. I'm going to make a note of that, Valerie.
it's a good one, yeah.
So the next one, the fourth one, is be present now. I, as I was saying, we run through life, and as women, we think we can multitask with everything in every facet of our life. We can be on the phone
But
and cook. We can manage the kids to do their homework while we cook dinner, right? Depending on how old your kids are. In my case, it's like, what would I multitask? I think I stopped multitasking at some point. Um, but we think that makes us more productive. But rather, if we actually focus on the one thing, or in this case where I had you do this little breathing exercise, it stopped you from thinking, okay, well, I just came from this. What's the next thing I need to do? And the next thing after that, and the thing after that. And what am I going to make for dinner tonight? Or who do I have to see tonight? Right? Or did I get everything done on this checklist that I have done? Right? Oh, well, I love my lists and checklists. That also is my way of focusing. But that's the thing. Our brains are just trying to run millions of miles per hour. And we're just not built for that.
yeah.
And so I ask you, why do you think it's important to be present in the moment? Right now, right here.
I won't go that quickly. Okay. Well, I mean, for me, I think that, and I try to be intentional because you don't have a lot of time. Whether it's your kids or your spouse or your friends or even cooking or your pets or your your business, whatever it is. I mean, if you're really intentional over here, then all these other pieces fall apart, right? Like you have to have a little bit of a balance of it all. Um, and because you don't have much time, you got to be really intentional with the time you have, because you're going to blink and you're going to run out. Time isn't really on our side. So that's my thought.
Yeah. I've been seeing that this is just like the most important thing of all. It's in my life, at least where I'm at right now, it's the most important thing to be fully present with where you are and what you're doing, to recognize how you're feeling in that moment, what kind of autopilot you might be running, whether it's emotional or thinking or doing. We just live our life in autopilot so much. In fact, I went to a friend's house a while ago, and we live in New York City, and a water pipe burst on her street. And so she had no water for the whole day. You know how many times she tried to turn the faucet on, tried to flush the toilet? Like, it could not get through our heads that it wasn't working. And I'll never forget that example now, because it shows us how unconscious we are and how autopilot we are. We knew that the water would not turn on, but we just mindlessly do it anyway because of habit. So it's like, how many other things are you doing unconsciously out of habit that might be hurting you or not supporting, our best self, our best life?
Well, and you've seen those little comedy skits where they switch the person on them. The person will like duck behind a table and a different person will pop up, but in the same clothes. And the person who's standing on the other side, who was distracted for a minute, looks back and doesn't even think about it, doesn't even notice it's a completely different person. And you're just like, oh my gosh, that's how unconscious we are with just walking through the streets and just going through life. You're just like, you have like no idea. I mean, it was very obvious to me because you watched it happen, but would I have noticed it either? I don't know. I'm a little paranoid when I go out in public, but I'm always watching everybody.
The other thing I see is we're constantly on our phones. You can walk through, right? In New York too, everybody's busy on their phones as they're walking and crossing the street, or they're on the subway, right? And BART, we have BART here, so we're mostly on our phones until we see the weird homeless guy or one of the crazy people just trying to take over the train, right? And it's like, oh, let's call BART police and everybody out. Or there's a medical emergency and then you're delayed and we all grumble instead of taking that moment and just say, okay, so this just happened. What can I do with this time? Can I pause? Can I breathe? Can I reflect? What's important to me right now?
Yeah,
We get so caught up in a lot of things.
you're so right.
And when you are present, instead of being on autopilot, as Whitney cleverly said, you actually do want control in this part, right? There's that balance again. It's having then control of your time, your energy, and the choices you get to make because you're centered. You're not all over the place. You're being intentional. And lastly, this is my favorite because I grew up for the most of my life, and sometimes every now and then I get this fear that I am not enough. And so I love when I started switching my mindset to my best is enough. I am doing my best with the resources I have because then my pressure that I tend to put on myself, that perfection, that self-doubt, that fear of the what ifs, right? That prevented me to be open to experiences, that prevented me from being curious and experimental, that prevented me from the boundaries I needed to establish for myself and how to be present now. Once I started switching and reframing, my best is enough, I was able to open up to the rest of the agreements and frameworks. Why is it so important to tell yourself, my best is enough? I'm doing the best I can right now.
Mm. As soon as we feel like it's not enough, it's just deflating and discouraging and disempowering. And it's so easy to give up. And yet, if we just say, my best is enough, we keep going and it will get better. And done is better than perfect.
Yeah, I always try to tell myself it doesn't have to be perfect, right? I mean, you always have time to create continuous improvement in whatever you do, but you've gotten to a point. So I have a thing with scheduling. If you can imagine, I'm a planner. I have scheduled life out to 2036 so far. I feel
Wow.
like I'm behind. I need to I'm getting too close now. I'm within 10 years. That's not okay. I need to think bigger now. But it's knowing that I've created smaller goals to get to the bigger goals. And if it's written down, then I know that I can get there. And celebrating the small wins. But sometimes I do have a very A personality, and I'm very much a perfectionist, and I will do it until it is perfect. And so that's definitely something I've had to kind of step back and say, this is good enough. You have time to improve it. And sometimes that just requires bringing some other people in with you and just say, hey, I can't get outside of this. Like I can't just be done with it. And so maybe that's when you bring some of your tribes in, that those pair of eyes or those teaming partners or whatever it is, just to allow you to be okay with where it is. And sometimes that's because we're trying to do so much on our own, right? Yeah, but I do like that. My best is
Yeah.
enough. So I celebrate that the best is enough for about 5 minutes. And then I'm like, okay, I'll switch right to, right, what's the plan to
Yeah.
get it improved?
I've noticed I will just spend forever on a task if I don't give it a limit. If I'm not like, it's good enough. Like, I will edit my videos and edit out every little sound, every little, and just like, it will just take hours upon hours upon hours. And there are some things that really need that level of attention to detail, and I do it. But some of this other stuff, Canva, like I could just spend hours creating the right colors and shapes, and it's like, it's not that important. Just get it done, move on, and do something else.
That's how I feel about my newsletters.
Mm.
I started a week ago, get most of it done. I'll come back to it, a few days later, and I'm like tweaking, and it's like, okay, stop. It's good. As long as the content is there and what you're looking and you're getting the message across, it is fine. And
And
that's the thing.
publish. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have a friend who published a book, and I met with her yesterday to get a copy. And she's like, when you're reading it, let me know if you find anything, some typos or whatever. And I'm like, you already published this? She goes, yeah, it's a first edition. Second edition out. Like, no big deal. I went, of course.
I love it.
Right. And so it's this beautiful build her, be heard. And from her experiences of being in construction and so forth. Well, anyway, so she publishes this book to help other women who are trying to navigate this. And she's like, I just wanted to get it out there in their hands as soon as possible. And that was most important to her. And it didn't need to be perfect. She's like, I read it a few times after I published it. I found a couple of things. Let me know if you see anything else. I was very nonchalant. Like you'd eat a few of those Cheerios, I guess.
Yeah. What I see in this, and I've experienced this for myself, is I got a little bit of the angel and I got a little bit of the devil, right? I grew up with my father who's very critical. I think it was like there's a lot of criticism and judgment in his family, and that passed on to him. Because I see him, it's like, we don't go out of the house if we're in our pajamas. Like, that's a big no-no. And with all of that, and he's an engineer, so he's very logical. There's a lot of black and white. I am so not black and white, but there are times where I do. And I learned that harsh self-criticism for myself. And that is where I end up having a lot of pressure. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And then I get overwhelmed and I get exhausted, where I just don't want to do anything. And then I freak out because I paralyzed myself. And I'm like, ah, crap, I didn't do this. Okay, I need to go do this. And then I'll run myself late at night trying to get stuff done. It's a vicious cycle. And that's where if I stopped and I breathe and I center myself and I like say, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Do what you can, do the best that you can, and just let it go. And part of that, when I tell myself that, is actually really saying, it's okay, accept yourself the way it is and the way you are. Bring that self-compassion that we sometimes forget. Agreeing and admitting and knowing our strengths and our shortcomings. We all have them.
I
And
had a, oh, sorry, keep going.
no, no, go
And
ahead.
I was going to say I had a similar experience. You know, my dad would say, if you can get an A, you can get an A plus. And then my grandfather, which clearly he is kind of, you know, runs downhill, but you have to kind of break those cycles, right? And did you try your best? Did you give your 100%? Then this is great. This is awesome. Yeah. Now we know where we need to work. That's okay. You know, my grandfather, his father would be like, what word did you just say? Do you know how to spell that? You shouldn't say words you can't spell. Like, it's so hypercritical.
Yeah. And I just want to give us a time check-in. We've got 5 more minutes, but we'll be wrapping up
Sure.
in the next few minutes. So Pallavi, whatever you want to do to summarize, or if there's any questions.
Yeah. So thanks for the time check. Uh, but I wanted to share these things and I want to share my personal experience with it because it's my way of showing I'm being authentic, but it's also knowing that I'm humbled that you both also have experienced some of these things as well and adding value into this conversation, right? This is all about a conversation is we can use different parts of these frameworks in different areas of our life where we may, and it's the idea is utilizing the framework and then thinking, where can I improve in this part of my area if I need to? It's not a have to, it's a want to. Is something needs to be improved? I'm not trying to push on the imperfectness to being very perfect, but you recognize that there's a need to improve your life for the better. Because what I believe for myself is I'm not happy being stagnant and static. For me, my joy comes in, I get to learn from somebody else. I get to grow personally. I get to grow professionally when I see these opportunities, when I let go of expectations, when I can be curious and ask questions, pick someone's brain, or I have put boundaries and I have to deal with a lot that's going on in my life currently. So I don't run down because I'm good to nobody when I'm running on empty. Or the time where I get present and I love my meditations and love my breathing exercises when I remember them. And constantly reminding myself I am enough and accepting myself, my strengths, my flaws, because they make me who I am. And so I want to remind you, you are perfect just the way you are, but it's okay to improve yourself. And that's a little bit of the HR mindset there.
Yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful.
that was lovely.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pallavi, for that beautiful presentation.